They told her she was worthless without a wolf. They laughed when she dragged a dying beast from the river, but that beast was the Alpha King, and saving him would either crown her queen or destroy them both. This is the story of the girl who defied an empire with nothing but her bare hands and a heart that refused to break. Stay until the end to see how a ghost became a queen, and smash that like button and drop your city in the comments so I know you're riding with Elara from the start. The northern frontier had no mercy for the weak. Elara Vale learned that truth before she could even walk. Born under a blood moon to a mother who died bringing her into the world, she came into this harsh land with one fatal flaw: no wolf. In a society where your worth was measured by the beast that lived inside you, where your rank was determined by the ferocity of your shift, Elara was less than nothing. She was a ghost. The Iron Shade Pack didn't exile her outright. That would have been a kindness. Instead, they let her exist on the fringe, a living reminder of what happened when the bloodline failed. They gave her a crumbling cabin at the forest's edge, so far from the main compound that wolves only ventured there when they wanted to be forgotten. And they wanted to forget Elara. The cabin itself was barely standing, rotted beams, a roof that leaked when it rained, windows covered with animal skins because the glass had shattered years ago. But it was hers, the only thing in this world that belonged to her. Elara was 23 now, and she'd survived longer than anyone expected. She had her grandmother's journals filled with sketches of plants and careful notes about their properties. Old Marin had been a healer before the pack turned on her for defending Elara's right to live. They'd found her body in the woods 3 winters ago, torn apart by rogue wolves. Elara knew better. There were no rogue wolves near Ironshade territory that season. She kept her head down, gathered herbs in the forest, treated minor wounds for the Omegas who were desperate enough to seek her out in secret, and stayed invisible. The pack's current alpha, Victor Rendall, tolerated her existence as long as she never stepped foot in the main compound or spoke to ranked wolves. His son, however, had other ideas. Cain Rendall was everything Elara was not: powerful, arrogant, and cruel in the casual way of men who'd never been told no. His wolf was massive and silver, a beast that could tear through 3 opponents without breaking stride. He was set to inherit his father's title, and everyone knew it. He also enjoyed reminding Elara of her place. Still breathing ghost? Elara didn't look up from the herbs she was bundling on her cabin's sagging porch. It was late afternoon, and she'd hoped to finish before dark. Cain's voice shattered that hope like a rock through ice. Cain. She kept her tone flat, empty of challenge, submissive enough to avoid provoking him, but not so broken that he'd find sport in pushing harder. He leaned against the porch railing, and she heard the wood groan under his weight. Even in human form, he radiated danger. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes like chips of flint. Handsome, if you ignored the cruelty that twisted his mouth when he smiled. "You know what today is?" he asked. Elara's hand stilled. She did know. The Lunar Assembly, when all the northern packs gathered to renew alliances, settle disputes, and show off their strongest wolves. It happened once every 5 years, and this year, Ironshade was hosting, which meant hundreds of ranked wolves would flood the territory over the next week. Wolves who would see Elara as an insult to their kind. "Yes," she said quietly. "My father wants you gone before the other packs arrive. Can't have them thinking we're weak enough to shelter a wolfless freak." Cain's smile widened. "You've got until sunrise tomorrow. After that, anyone who sees you on Packland has permission to deal with you however they want." Elara's stomach dropped. "This is Packland. Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem, Ghost." He pushed off the railing, making the whole porch shudder. "Maybe the rogues will take you in. Or maybe they'll just eat you. Either way, you're not my father's burden anymore." He walked away whistling, his pack bond humming with satisfaction. Elara waited until he was out of sight before she let herself shake. Sunrise tomorrow. Less than 18 hours. The forest beyond Ironshade territory was a death sentence for a wolfless human. Rogues, wild predators, and the brutal cold would kill her within days. But staying meant facing wolves who'd been given permission to deal with her. She had no good choices. Elara spent the rest of the afternoon packing what little she owned. Her grandmother's journals, dried herbs, a hunting knife with a blade worn thin from sharpening, and a wool cloak that had more patches than original fabric. She worked methodically, refusing to let panic cloud her thinking. If she was going to survive, she needed supplies. Real supplies. The kind you couldn't gather in a few hours. The Iron Shade River. The thought hit her like a slap, sharp and sudden. There was a stretch of the river about 2 miles north where rare mushrooms grew on the banks. Bloodcap and silverleaf, both worth a fortune to the right buyer. If she could gather enough before dawn, she might be able to trade for supplies in one of the neutral settlements. It was risky. The river was treacherous even in good weather, and storm clouds had been gathering all afternoon. But risky was better than certain death. Elara grabbed her gathering basket and headed into the forest. The storm hit harder than she'd expected. Rain came down in sheets, turning the forest floor into a slick maze of mud and exposed roots. Lightning split the sky every few minutes, throwing everything into stark relief before plunging it back into darkness. The wind howled through the trees like a living thing, tearing at her cloak and stealing the warmth from her body. Elara kept moving. She knew these woods better than anyone in the pack. While they relied on their wolves to navigate, she'd learned every path, every landmark, every safe crossing. Her human senses were sharper because she had no choice. She'd honed them through years of survival. The river's roar reached her before she saw it. Normally a steady, manageable current, the Iron Shade had transformed into a raging torrent. Brown water churned over rocks and submerged logs, moving fast enough to break bones. Elara approached cautiously, scanning the banks for the mushrooms. There, clusters of bloodcap clinging to a fallen tree, their caps dark red, even in the rain. She knelt carefully, pulling out her knife to harvest them. That's when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm, deep, guttural, and desperate, somewhere between a howl and a gurgle. Coming from the river. Elara's head snapped up. At first she saw nothing but churning water and debris. Then lightning flashed, and she saw it. A wolf. Massive even by pack standards, black as midnight with fur that seemed to drink the light. It was caught in the current, thrashing weakly against a tangle of logs and branches. One leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and dark blood stained the water around it. As she watched, the wolf's head went under. Every instinct screamed at her to stay put. That wolf was huge. An alpha, maybe even something more. If it survived and turned on her, she'd be dead before she could scream. And if someone from the pack saw her helping a rogue wolf, they'd kill her on the spot. But Elara was already moving. She didn't think about it, didn't weigh the consequences or calculate the odds. She just dropped her basket and ran along the bank, eyes tracking the wolf's position in the current. The fallen tree extended about 15 feet into the river, wedged between two large rocks. If she could get out on it, she might be able to reach the wolf before it drowned or was smashed against the rocks downstream. Elara climbed onto the trunk, her boots slipping on wet bark. The river clawed at the tree, trying to tear it free. She went down on her hands and knees, crawling forward as the wood groaned and shifted beneath her. 10 feet, 12, 15. The wolf surfaced again, close enough now that she could see its eyes, brilliant blue, clouded with pain and exhaustion. It looked at her, and for a moment she swore she saw recognition, understanding. "Help me." Elara reached out, snagging a handful of wet fur. The wolf was too heavy to pull free, and the current was too strong. She needed leverage. Her rope. She'd brought rope to tie the herb bundles. Working frantically, Elara looped the rope around the wolf's chest, just behind its front legs. The animal didn't fight her. It barely had the strength to keep its head above water. She tied the other end around the tree trunk, then braced herself and pulled. Nothing happened. The wolf was too heavy, the current too fierce. "Come on," she growled through gritted teeth. "Come on!" She threw all her weight backward, legs braced against the tree trunk, arms burning with effort. Inch by inch, the wolf shifted. Its claws found purchase on a submerged rock. It pushed weakly, and suddenly they were making progress. Elara hauled until her hands bled, until her muscles screamed, until the wolf's front half was on the tree trunk. Then she grabbed its scruff and pulled again, ignoring the way her back threatened to give out. The wolf collapsed onto the trunk, sides heaving. It was even bigger up close, easily 7 feet from nose to tail, with shoulders as broad as a man's. And it was hurt badly. The broken leg was the least of it. There were deep gashes along its flank, and the smell of silver poisoning made her nose burn. Someone had tried to kill this wolf, and they'd nearly succeeded. Elara untied the rope with shaking hands and coaxed the wolf toward the shore. It moved slowly, painfully, but it moved. When they finally reached solid ground, the animal collapsed again, unconscious. For a long moment, Elara just stood there in the rain, staring at what she'd done. She'd saved a rogue wolf, a poisoned, possibly rabid rogue wolf that could kill her the moment it woke up, and she had absolutely no idea what to do next. Getting the wolf to her cabin was a nightmare. It took hours. Elara couldn't carry it. The animal weighed at least 250 pounds. So she rigged a makeshift sled from branches and her cloak. She dragged it inch by inch through the mud, stopping every few minutes to rest and make sure the wolf was still breathing. By the time she reached her cabin, dawn was maybe 3 hours away. Her deadline was approaching fast, and she'd wasted the entire night saving a creature that might kill her. But she couldn't leave it outside. If anyone saw it, they'd know she'd helped a rogue. And that would be a death sentence. Elara's cabin had a small root cellar, barely 5 feet by 7, dug into the earth beneath the floorboards. She used it to store herbs and preserve meat through the winter. It was dark, cool, and hidden. Perfect. She hauled the wolf inside and lowered it through the trapdoor. It barely fit, its massive body taking up almost the entire space. But it was hidden, and that was what mattered. Elara cleaned its wounds as best she could with what little medical supplies she had. The silver poisoning was bad. She could see black veins spreading from the gashes, creeping toward the wolf's heart. If she didn't draw it out soon, the animal would die. She grabbed her grandmother's journal and flipped through the pages frantically. There, a recipe for a poultice that drew out toxins. It required golden seal root, activated charcoal, and fresh yarrow. She had golden seal and charcoal, but yarrow only grew near the pack compound. Elara's hands stilled. Going to the compound now, with wolves arriving for the lunar assembly, was suicide. But if she didn't get that yarrow, the wolf would die anyway. And for reasons she couldn't explain, that felt wrong. She'd already risked everything to save this creature. Might as well finish the job. She pulled her hood up and slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness. So, the pack compound was chaos. Even this early, wolves were everywhere, setting up pavilions for the visiting packs, hauling supplies, marking territory boundaries. Elara spotted at least 20 wolves she didn't recognize, their scents foreign and aggressive. She stayed in the shadows, moving like a ghost through the confusion. The medicinal garden was on the far side of the compound near the healer's cottage. It should have been empty this early, but Elara's luck had never been that good. 2 wolves stood guard near the garden gate, talking in low voices. Both wore the silver bands of ranked warriors. Elara crouched behind a supply wagon, thinking fast. She could wait for them to leave, but sunrise was maybe an hour away. Once full light hit, she'd be spotted for sure. She needed a distraction. Her eyes landed on a stack of oil lanterns near the pavilions. If one of those tipped over, started a small fire. Elara moved quickly, staying low. She reached the lanterns, grabbed one, and carried it to a pile of canvas tarps 20 feet from the guards. She tipped the oil out carefully, then pulled out her flint. 1 strike, 2, 3. The oil caught with a soft whoosh, flames spreading across the canvas. Within seconds, black smoke was billowing into the sky. "Fire!" one of the guards shouted. Both wolves shifted and raced toward the blaze. Elara ran for the garden. She found the yarrow quickly. Her grandmother had taught her to identify it by touch in the dark. She grabbed as much as she could carry, stuffed it into her shirt, and turned to leave. "You." The voice froze her in place. She turned slowly. Cain Rendall stood at the garden gate, eyes glowing amber in the firelight. His wolf was just beneath the surface, making his presence feel enormous, suffocating. "The ghost girl," he said slowly, "sneaking around the compound on the morning she's supposed to be gone. And look, there's a convenient fire pulling guards away from their posts." His smile was cold. "You starting fires now, freak?" Elara's mind raced. If she ran, he'd catch her in seconds. If she fought, she'd lose. Her only option was to talk her way out. "I needed medicine," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Someone I'm treating got hurt." "Someone." Cain stepped closer. "Who?" "A trader, passing through." "We don't allow traders this close to pack land during the assembly." Another step. "Try again." Elara's hand closed around the knife at her belt. She'd never beat Cain in a fight, but if she moved fast enough, she might be able to get past him and make it to the forest. "Cain!" a voice shouted from across the compound. "We need you at the fire. One of the pavilions caught." Cain's jaw tightened. He looked at Elara, then at the spreading fire, clearly torn. "You're gone by sunrise," he growled. "If I see you after that, I'll kill you myself. And I'll make it slow." He turned and ran toward the fire. Elara didn't wait. She bolted for the forest, heart hammering, the stolen yarrow clutched against her chest. She made it back to her cabin with maybe 20 minutes to spare before sunrise. Her hands shook as she ground the herbs into a paste, mixed them with the other ingredients, and descended into the root cellar. The wolf was worse. Its breathing was shallow, and the black veins had spread almost to its chest. She had minutes, maybe less. Elara packed the poultice into the wounds, working quickly. The wolf's eyes fluttered open, those impossible blue eyes, and locked on her face. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "Just hold on." The wolf's eyes closed again. Elara worked through sunrise, barely aware of the light creeping through her cabin's broken windows. She changed the poultice 3 times, monitoring the black veins as they slowly, painfully began to recede. It was working. By mid-morning, the wolf was breathing easier. The immediate danger had passed. Elara climbed out of the cellar and collapsed on her cabin floor, exhausted beyond measure. She'd defied Cain's order. She'd stolen from the pack compound. She'd committed herself to hiding and healing a rogue wolf that could still kill her. And she'd do it again. Because in that moment when the wolf's eyes met hers in the river, she'd seen something that shook her to her core. She'd seen understanding, recognition. Not the mindless hunger of a rogue, but the gaze of someone who knew exactly what she was risking to save them. Someone who would remember. Bon. Elara spent the next day expecting Cain or his father's enforcers to come crashing through her door. Every sound made her jump, every bird call, every snapping branch. But no one came. The pack was too busy with the lunar assembly to worry about one wolfless outcast. She checked on the wolf every few hours, changing poultices and monitoring its healing. The silver poisoning was clearing, but the broken leg would take time. And the creature was enormous, far too big to be a normal pack wolf. On the second night, she descended into the cellar with fresh water and meat scraps she'd managed to hunt. The wolf was awake, watching her with those eerie blue eyes. "Hey," she said softly, setting down the food. "How are you feeling?" The wolf's ears flicked forward. It looked at the meat, then back at her, and she could have sworn it was debating something. Then it shifted. The change was faster than any shift Elara had ever seen. One moment, a massive black wolf filled the cellar. The next, a man crouched in the same space, naked and bleeding, but very, very human, and very, very alive. Elara scrambled backwards so fast she hit her head on the cellar's low ceiling. "What? Who?" The man looked up at her, and she froze. He was tall, easily 6.5 feet, with a warrior's build, all muscle and controlled power. His hair was black, slightly too long, and his eyes were the same piercing blue she'd seen in the wolf. A strong jaw, sharp features, and a face that would have been handsome if not for the exhaustion and pain carved into it. And scars, so many scars, old ones, crisscrossing his chest and arms like a map of battles fought and survived. "You saved my life," he said. His voice was deep, rough from disuse. "Why?" Elara's mind spun. She'd saved dozens of injured animals over the years, birds with broken wings, rabbits caught in traps. But this was different. This was a shifter, a wolf who could think, speak, and make choices. "You were drowning," she managed. "I was a rogue wolf in enemy territory." His gaze was intense, searching. "You should have left me to die. Anyone else would have." "I'm not anyone else." Something flickered across his face, surprise, maybe, or respect. "No, you're not." He tried to sit up, winced, and settled back down. "What's your name?" "Elara Vale?" "Vale." He turned the name over like he was tasting it. "Ironshade Pack?" "Technically, though they'd probably disagree." His eyes sharpened. "You're wolfless." It wasn't a question. Elara lifted her chin anyway. Yes. And you risked your life to save a rogue wolf during the lunar assembly, knowing what would happen if anyone caught you. Apparently, I'm not great at self-preservation. The ghost of a smile touched his mouth. Then it faded, and his expression went serious. I need you to listen very carefully, Elara Vale. What I'm about to tell you will put your life in more danger than you can possibly imagine, but you've earned the truth. Elara's heart hammered. Who are you? The man met her eyes, and she saw something ancient and powerful looking back at her. Something that made her wolf-blessed packmates look like children playing at being predators. My name is Ronan Draven, he said quietly, and I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The world tilted. Elara had heard stories about the Alpha King. Everyone had. He ruled the 5 northern packs with absolute authority, maintaining the fragile peace between territories that had warred for generations. He was supposed to be unstoppable, unkillable, a force of nature, and she'd pulled him half dead from a river. The Alpha King, she repeated slowly, is hiding in my root cellar. For now, Ronan's jaw tightened. 3 nights ago, I was ambushed during a territory inspection. 5 wolves, all trained assassins, all carrying silver weapons. They were good. I killed 3 before the poison took hold. The other 2 chased me to the river. I went in rather than let them finish me. Who sent them? That's the question. His eyes went dark. Someone with enough power to hire trained killers and enough ambition to try for the throne. And whoever they are, they're here, at your lunar assembly. Elara's blood ran cold. What? The assembly is the perfect cover. Hundreds of wolves from different packs, all gathered in neutral territory. Easy to hide a conspiracy in that chaos. Ronan tried to sit up again, managed it this time despite the pain. I have maybe 4 days before my absence is noticed, and my enemies move to declare me dead. 4 days to heal enough to travel, identify the traitor, and end this before it becomes a civil war. You're in no condition to travel, Elara said firmly. That leg needs at least a week to heal properly, and the silver poisoning, I know. Frustration bled through his voice. Which is why I need your help. My help? Elara almost laughed. I'm a wolfless outcast who's been ordered off packlands. What could I possibly do? Ronan looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. Everything. The word hung in the air between them like smoke. Everything. Elara stared at Ronan Draven, the Alpha King of the Northern Territories, currently bleeding in her root cellar and asking for her help. The absurdity of it made her head spin. You don't even know me, she said slowly. I know enough. Ronan shifted against the earthen wall, pain flickering across his face. You're wolfless, which means you've survived in a world designed to kill you. You're smart enough to know which herbs draw out silver poisoning. Most pack healers don't even know that. And you pulled a dying wolf from a raging river during a storm when any sane person would have run the other way. That last one might argue against intelligence. Or it proves you have something most wolves don't. His blue eyes locked on hers. Courage that isn't rooted in physical strength. The kind that matters when everything else fails. Elara's throat tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Like she was worth something. Like her lack of a wolf didn't make her less. What do you need? She asked. Relief washed across Ronan's face. Information. The wolves who ambushed me knew my route, my schedule, my guard rotation. That level of detail requires someone inside my inner circle. Someone at this assembly. You think one of the pack alphas is the traitor? I'm certain of it. He grimaced as he adjusted his broken leg. The question is which one? There are 5 packs in the Northern Territories. Ironshade, Blackridge, Frostmaw, Shadowpine, and my own, Silvercrest. Any of their alphas could want my throne. Elara's mind raced. She'd spent years on the edges of pack society, invisible and ignored. But that invisibility had taught her to observe, to listen to conversations wolves thought no one else could hear. Victor Rendall has been pushing for more territory for years, she said. He thinks Ironshade deserves a larger share of the hunting grounds, but I don't know if he'd risk open rebellion. What about his son? Cain? Elara frowned. He's ambitious, cruel, but he's also loyal to his father's vision, I can't see him acting without Victor's approval. Ronan nodded slowly, processing this. The other alphas, do you know anything about them? Only what I've overheard. Blackridge's alpha, Gareth Stone, is supposed to be a military genius. Frostmaw's alpha, Helena Cross, controls the northern trade routes. Shadowpine's alpha, she paused. Marcus Thorne. He lost his mate 5 years ago in a border dispute you mediated, ruled against him. Ronan's expression darkened. I remember. He claimed Silvercrest wolves crossed into his territory and killed her. The evidence said otherwise. Did it? Elara asked quietly. Or did someone make it look that way? The silence that followed was heavy with implication. If someone had framed Silvercrest for that death, they'd been planning this for years, building resentment, planting seeds of rebellion. This wasn't just an assassination attempt. It was a conspiracy. I need to send word to my royal guard, Ronan said. They're stationed 3 days north, waiting for me to return from the territory inspection. If I can signal them, you can't, Elara cut him off. The moment you send any kind of message, whoever's hunting you will know you're alive. They'll find you before your guards do. Then what do you suggest? Elara took a breath. You said you have 4 days before your absence is noticed. Use that time to heal and gather evidence. Let them think you're dead while we figure out who wants you that way. We? Ronan's eyebrow lifted. You're in my root cellar. That makes this my problem too. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. You understand what you're agreeing to? If anyone discovers you're hiding me, they'll execute you, slowly, publicly, as an example. They were going to kill me anyway. Elara's voice was steady. At least this way, I'm dying for something that matters. Ronan studied her for a long moment. Then he inclined his head, a small gesture, but coming from an Alpha King, it felt like a bow. Tell me about the assembly, he said. What's happening up there? Elara settled against the cellar wall, organizing her thoughts. It started 2 days ago. All 5 packs are here. Alphas, their heirs, ranked wolves. They're holding the traditional competitions starting tomorrow. Combat trials, hunt challenges, territory negotiations. Who's competing? Everyone who wants to prove themselves. Kane will fight in the Alpha Air Division. The other heirs too, probably. Ronan's eyes sharpened. The heirs. If one of the Alphas is planning a coup, their heir would need to be strong enough to hold the throne after. They'd want to make a statement at the assembly. You think the traitor's child will reveal them? Children often reflect their parents' ambitions. Watch the heirs, see who's too confident, too prepared, too certain they'll win. Elara nodded, filing this away. I'll need a reason to be at the competitions. I was supposed to be gone by now. Can you hide in the crowds? For a while. But if Kane or his father spot me... A shout from outside cut her off. Elara froze. Footsteps, multiple pairs, heading toward her cabin. She scrambled up through the trapdoor and lowered it carefully, making sure Ronan was hidden. Then she grabbed her gathering basket and tried to look like she'd been sorting herbs. The door slammed open. 3 wolves stood in the entrance, all wearing the silver bands of Ironshade warriors. The leader was a woman Elara vaguely recognized, Kara, one of Victor's enforcers. You're still here, Kara said flatly. I'm packing. Elara gestured at the basket. Taking my supplies. You were supposed to be gone yesterday. Kara stepped inside, her wolf just beneath the surface, making the small cabin feel suffocating. Alpha's orders were clear. I needed time to... We don't care. Kara's eyes swept the cabin, taking in the sparse furniture, the bundles of herbs, the trapdoor. Her gaze lingered on that last part. What's down there? Elara's heart stopped. Storage. Root vegetables. Dried meat. Open it. It's just... Open. It. Elara's mind spun desperately. If she refused, they'd force it open. If she opened it herself, they'd find Ronan. Either way, they were both dead. Unless... There's a wolf down there, she said quietly. Kara's expression went predatory. What? A rogue. I found it injured in the forest. I was treating it before I left. The 3 warriors exchanged glances. Kara's smile was cold. You've been hiding a rogue wolf during the lunar assembly? It was dying. I couldn't just... Open the cellar, Kara ordered. Slowly. Alara's hands shook as she lifted the trapdoor. Kara peered down into the darkness, and Elara prayed that Ronan understood what was happening, that he'd stay in wolf form, act injured and harmless. The black wolf lay exactly where she'd left him, sides heaving, eyes half closed. It looked weak, broken, nothing like the Alpha King. Pathetic, Kara muttered. Kill it. Wait, Elara started. One of the other warriors raised his hand, claws extending. He was going to drop into the cellar and tear Ronan apart. Elara moved without thinking. She grabbed a clay pot from her shelf and hurled it at the warrior's head. It shattered against his skull, and he staggered back with a roar. You dare! Kara snarled. The wolf is mine, Elara shouted. I saved it, I healed it, and it's coming with me when I leave. You think we're going to let you walk out of here with a rogue wolf? I think you're going to let me take my property and leave Packlands like Victor ordered. Elara's voice was steel. Or are you going to explain to your alpha why you wasted time killing a dying animal instead of preparing for the assembly? Kara's jaw clenched. She looked at the wolf, at Elara, calculating. Finally, she stepped back. You have until sunset, she said. You and your pet. After that, if we see either of you on Ironshade Land, you're both dead. They left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the walls. Elara waited until their footsteps faded completely. Then she collapsed against the wall, shaking. That, Ronan's voice drifted up from the cellar, was impressive. That was insane, Elara corrected. She looked down at him, still in wolf form, still pretending to be weak. We have until sunset, maybe 6 hours. Then we need to move fast. You can barely walk. I'll manage. The wolf shifted and Ronan pulled himself up through the trapdoor with obvious effort. He was dressed now, or partially dressed, in torn trousers that barely survived the shift. His chest was still bare, revealing the full extent of his scars. We need somewhere safer to hide. There is nowhere safer, not on Ironshade Lands. Then we go off them. Elara stared at him. The forest beyond Pack territory is a death trap. Rogues, predators, the cold. I'll take my chances with rogues over a coordinated assassination. Ronan limped to the window, scanning the forest. Is there anywhere within a day's travel where we could hide? Somewhere the Packs wouldn't think to look? Elara's mind raced. There was one place, an old hunting lodge her grandmother had shown her years ago, maybe 8 miles northeast. It had been abandoned for decades, left to rot after some territorial dispute. Most wolves didn't even remember it existed. Maybe, she said slowly, but you're in no condition to travel 8 miles. I've traveled farther in worse shape. Not with a broken leg and silver poisoning. Ronan turned to face her, and his expression was harder than stone. Elara, listen to me. Whoever tried to kill me will try again the moment they realize I survived. And when they do, anyone hiding me becomes a target. If you want to survive this, we need to move. Now. He was right. She knew he was right. But 8 miles through hostile territory, with an injured Alpha King and a deadline measured in hours. We'll need supplies, she said. Food, water, medical supplies, weapons. Can you get them without drawing attention? Elara thought of the chaos at the Pack compound, the hundreds of wolves preparing for the competitions. Maybe, if I'm fast. Then go. I'll pack what I can here. She grabbed her cloak and headed for the door, then paused. Ronan? When those warriors were here, you stayed in wolf form, acted weak. Why didn't you shift and kill them? His answer was quiet but absolute. Because you asked me to trust you, so I did. The weight of that trust settled on Elara's shoulders like a physical thing. An Alpha King, possibly the most powerful wolf in the north, had put his life in her hands. She couldn't let him down. The Pack compound was even more chaotic than before. Wolves everywhere, shouting orders, moving supplies, setting up the competition arena. Elara pulled her hood low and slipped through the crowds, invisible as always. The supply tent was guarded, but the guards were distracted by a fight that had broken out near the training grounds. Elara ducked inside and worked fast. Dried meat, hard bread, water skins, bandages. She stuffed everything into a canvas pack and turned to leave, and nearly ran into Kane Rendall. Ghost girl, he said, eyes gleaming. I heard you were supposed to be gone. Elara's hand tightened on the pack. I'm leaving now. With stolen supplies? Supplies I've earned through years of healing pack wolves for free. Kane's smile was cruel. That's not how my father sees it, but maybe we can make a deal. Every instinct screamed at Elara to run. What kind of deal? You're a healer. I need someone to treat my wolves during the competitions, someone who won't ask questions or report injuries to other packs. He stepped closer. Work for me through the assembly, and I'll overlook the theft. Refuse, and I'll have you executed right here. Elara's mind raced. This was insane, but it was also an opportunity. Access to the competitions, the alphas, the heirs, everything Ronan needed her to observe. Fine, she said. Kane's eyebrows rose. Just like that? You're giving me a choice between death and survival. I'm choosing survival. Smart girl. He grabbed her arm, gripped tight enough to bruise. But if you try to run, if you steal, if you do anything to embarrass me in front of the other packs, I'll kill you slowly. Understand? Perfectly. Kane released her and gestured to one of his wolves. Take her to the healer's tent. She's working the competitions. As they led her away, Elara's mind spun. She couldn't get supplies to Ronan now, couldn't warn him that she'd been conscripted. She was trapped at the assembly, surrounded by the very wolves who wanted him dead. And somewhere in the forest, the Alpha King was waiting for her to return. The healer's tent was a sprawling canvas structure on the edge of the competition grounds. Inside it smelled of blood, sweat, and medicinal herbs. 3 other healers were already working, treating minor injuries from the preliminary trials. The lead healer, a grizzled woman named Maris, looked Elara up and down with obvious disapproval. You're the wolfless girl, she said flatly. Yes. Can you set a broken bone without fainting? Yes. Stitch a wound? I've done it dozens of times. Maris grunted. Then make yourself useful. We've got 50 fighters and not enough hands. The competition started within the hour. Elara lost herself in the work, setting fractures, cleaning gashes, applying poultices to bruises and sprains. The wolves treated her like furniture, speaking over her as if she wasn't there, which meant she heard everything. Did you see Helena's heir? The girl's fast. Too fast. Gareth's bringing his war wolves, full combat gear. He's expecting trouble. Marcus looked like he wanted to gut Victor during the opening ceremony. Whatever history they have, it's not settled. Elara filed it all away, building a mental map of alliances and tensions. But what she didn't hear was any mention of the Alpha King. No one seemed to know he was missing, which meant his enemies were hiding it, waiting for the right moment to reveal his death. The sun was setting when Kane appeared at the tent entrance. His face was flushed with victory. He'd won 3 straight matches, brutal displays of dominance that left his opponents bleeding and broken. Ghost, he called. Come here. Elara set down the bandages she'd been organizing and walked over. Kane grabbed her wrist and pulled her outside, away from listening ears. I need you to do something for me, he said quietly. What? There's a wolf from Blackridge. Big guy. Goes by Tomas. He's competing tomorrow in the heavyweight division. Kane's eyes were hard. I need him injured. Nothing permanent, but enough to keep him out of the final round. Elara's blood ran cold. You want me to sabotage a competitor? I want you to ensure Blackridge doesn't embarrass us in front of the other packs. And if I refuse? Kane's smile was vicious. Then I'll tell my father you've been treating a rogue wolf in your cabin. Wonder what he'd do with that information. Elara's heart stopped. He knew. Somehow he knew about Ronan. How? I followed you this morning, saw you dragging something through the forest. He leaned closer. Question is, what were you dragging, and why are you so desperate to protect it? Think. She had to think. It was a wolf, she said carefully. Injured. I was moving it before I left Packlands. Where is it now? Dead. The injuries were too severe. Kane studied her face, looking for the lie. Convenient. Nature isn't convenient, it's brutal. He laughed, sharp and humorless. Fine. Keep your secrets, Ghost, but sabotage Tomas, or I'll send wolves to search every inch of the forest until I find what you're hiding. He walked away, leaving Elara shaking with rage and fear. She couldn't sabotage an innocent wolf, but if she refused, Kane would hunt Ronan down. And in his current condition, the Alpha King wouldn't survive a coordinated search unless she warned him first. Elara waited until full dark, when the celebrations from the day's competitions had drawn most wolves to the great hall. Then she slipped away from the healer's tent and ran for the forest. Her cabin was empty, the trapdoor standing open. Ronan was gone. Panic seized her. Had Cain's wolves already found him? Had he tried to travel alone and collapsed somewhere? Then she saw the message carved into the earthen wall of the cellar in rough letters. Lodge, come when safe. Relief flooded through her. He'd made it. Somehow, injured and hunted, he'd made it to the abandoned lodge. But now she had to get there without being followed. And she had maybe 3 hours before her absence was noticed. Elara grabbed what few supplies remained in her cabin and headed northeast, moving fast through the darkness. She knew these woods by heart, every trail and shortcut. The lodge was 8 miles away, but she could make it in under 2 hours if she pushed. She was 4 miles in when she heard the wolves behind her. 3 of them, maybe 4, moving through the brush with predatory precision. Not random patrols, these were hunters, and they were tracking her. Elara ran. She abandoned stealth for speed, crashing through undergrowth and leaping over fallen logs. The wolves behind her howled, a sound that turned her blood to ice. They were gaining. Elara's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't slow down. The lodge was close now, maybe another mile. A massive gray wolf burst from the trees ahead of her, cutting off her escape. Elara skidded to a halt, spinning, but the other wolves had caught up. She was surrounded. 4 wolves, all bearing Ironshade scent, all watching her with hunger in their eyes. The gray wolf shifted, becoming a man she recognized, one of Victor's lieutenants, a brute named Dane. The Alpha wants you back at the compound, he said. Now. I was just... Save it. We followed your scent from the cabin. You're running somewhere, and we're going to find out where. Elara's mind raced. If they found Ronan, everything was over. She had to lead them away, buy him time. A howl split the night, so deep and powerful it shook the trees. The Ironshade wolves froze, ears flattening. That wasn't a normal wolf's howl. That was something ancient, primal, the sound of a predator that made other predators look like prey. From the darkness ahead, a massive black wolf emerged. Even injured, Ronan Draven was terrifying. He moved like violence given form, every step radiating lethal intent. His blue eyes blazed with cold fury, and the air around him seemed to vibrate with barely contained power. This wasn't the wounded animal Elara had pulled from the river. This was the Alpha King. Run, Dane whispered to his wolves. They didn't get the chance. Ronan moved faster than anything his size should move, a black blur that hit Dane like a battering ram. The lieutenant's shift was only half complete when Ronan's jaws closed around his throat. The other 3 wolves attacked as one. Ronan tore through them like they were made of paper, claws and fangs moving with surgical precision. It wasn't a fight, it was an execution. In under 30 seconds, all 4 Ironshade wolves were down, bleeding but alive. Barely. Ronan shifted, breathing hard, his broken leg clearly causing him agony, but his eyes were steady as they met Elara's. Are you hurt? He asked. Elara shook her head, too stunned to speak. Good. He looked at the groaning wolves. These 4 will tell Victor what they saw, which means we're out of time. What do we do? Ronan's smile was sharp as a blade. We stop hiding and start hunting. If my enemies want me dead, let's give them a chance to try. He pulled Elara toward the lodge, and she followed, her mind reeling. The girl without a wolf was running through the forest with the Alpha King, and somewhere behind them, the conspiracy was beginning to unravel. The abandoned lodge was worse than Elara remembered. Ronan pushed through the half-collapsed doorway, his weight making the rotted wood groan in protest. Inside, moonlight filtered through gaps in the roof, illuminating a single room thick with dust and debris. The furniture had long since been claimed by rot and weather, leaving only a stone fireplace and bare walls covered in moss. But it was defensible. One entrance, stone foundation, and far enough from packed territories that casual patrols wouldn't stumble across it. Sit, Elara ordered, dropping her pack and gesturing to a relatively stable section of floor. Let me check your leg. Ronan lowered himself carefully, his jaw tight with pain. Those wolves will report back within the hour. Victor will know I'm alive. Then we need to assume everyone knows. Elara knelt beside him, examining the broken leg. The splint she'd improvised days ago was holding, but barely. The fight had aggravated the fracture and fresh blood seeped through the bandages. You shouldn't have shifted. You could have done permanent damage. You were surrounded by 4 hostile wolves. His voice was matter-of-fact. What did you expect me to do? Not risk crippling yourself to save someone you barely know. Ronan caught her wrist, his grip gentle but firm. You're not just someone. You're the only person in this entire territory I can trust. The words hit Elara harder than she expected. She'd spent 23 years being told she was worthless, a mistake, a burden. And now the most powerful wolf in the north was looking at her like she mattered, like she was essential. She pulled her hand free and focused on cleaning his wounds, refusing to let him see how his words affected her. Kane knows something. He followed me this morning, saw me moving you. He's blackmailing me. Ronan's eyes went cold. What does he want? He wants me to sabotage a Blackridge fighter before tomorrow's heavyweight matches. Elara worked quickly, applying fresh poultices. If I refuse, he'll send wolves to search the forest. Let him search. We're not at your cabin anymore. Ronan, he knows I'm protecting something, and he's not stupid. She met his gaze. If those 4 wolves tell Victor they saw a massive black wolf defending me, how long before someone connects that to the Alpha King? The silence that followed was heavy with implications. You think Victor's involved, Ronan said slowly. I think Kane's behavior suggests Victor knows more than he should. He ordered me off Packlands right before the assembly. Convenient timing to clear potential witnesses. Kane's been watching me closer than he should care about a wolfless outcast, and now he wants me to sabotage a specific fighter from Blackridge. Elara tied off the bandage. Why Blackridge? What does Victor gain from weakening Gareth Stone's pack? Ronan's expression grew thoughtful. Blackridge controls the eastern trade routes. If Gareth's pack appears weak during the assembly, it damages his reputation. Other alphas might question his ability to protect those routes. And who benefits from that? Whoever wants to claim those routes for themselves. Ronan leaned back against the wall, thinking. Victor's been pushing for territory expansion for years. If he can undermine Gareth's authority, he could challenge for the eastern routes during the assembly negotiations. Which means Victor might not be trying to kill you for the throne, Elara said slowly. He's trying to eliminate you so there's no king to enforce the current territorial agreements. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture far more complex than a simple assassination. This wasn't about one alpha seizing power. This was about fracturing the entire Northern Alliance. If I'm dead, and no clear successor emerges, the 5 packs will turn on each other, Ronan said quietly. Civil war. Every alpha fighting for supremacy. No central authority to maintain peace. His hands clenched. Thousands would die. Elara's stomach churned. We need proof. Something concrete to expose Victor before he can make his move. The assembly negotiations happen in 3 days. That's when territorial agreements are renewed. Ronan's eyes burned with intensity. If Victor's planning something, it'll happen then. He'll need me confirmed dead before he can challenge the existing borders. Then we have 3 days to prove you're alive and expose the conspiracy, while hiding from every wolf at the assembly, healing from silver poisoning, and avoiding assassination. Ronan's smile was grim. Should be simple. Despite everything, Elara almost laughed. You have a strange definition of simple. I'm the Alpha King. Nothing about my life is simple. Elara stood and moved to the window, scanning the dark forest. Those wolves Kane sent. They'll reach Victor soon. He'll send a larger force to find you. We can't stay here. Where do you suggest we go? We're surrounded by hostile territory. An idea was forming in Elara's mind. Dangerous, possibly insane, but the only option she could see. The assembly. We go straight into the heart of it. Ronan stared at her. You want to hide me among the people trying to kill me? I want to hide you in the one place they won't expect you to be. Elara turned to face him. Think about it. Right now, they're searching the forest, the borders, anywhere a fugitive Alpha King might run. They're not looking for you at the competition grounds, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses. Because that would be suicidal. Or brilliant. Elara's mind raced, the plan taking shape. You can't shift. Your leg won't take it. But in human form, with different clothes, with your scent masked by the crowds and the competitions, you could walk right past them. And do what? I can barely walk, Elara. I can't fight. You don't need to fight. You need to observe. She knelt in front of him again, urgent. The conspirators will reveal themselves during the negotiations. Victor, whoever else is involved, they'll show their hand. But we need to be there to see it. Ronan studied her face for a long moment. This is the bold decision you mentioned earlier, isn't it? The one that's going to get us both killed. Probably. And you're certain this is our best option? Elara thought about the alternatives. Running meant leaving the conspiracy unchallenged, letting Victor plunge the territories into civil war. Hiding meant slowly starving while enemy wolves closed in. Fighting meant suicide. Ronan was too injured, and she had no wolf at all. This was their only chance. I'm certain it's our only option, she said. Ronan was quiet for another moment. Then he nodded. Decision made. We'll need disguises. Something to mask my appearance and scent. I can get clothes from the supply tents. And there's a plant, silverroot, that disrupts scent recognition. Wolves use it for hunting. Where do we find it? Elara's stomach sank. The swamp, 3 miles west, deep in Ironshade territory. Of course it is. Ronan tried to stand, nearly collapsed, and Elara caught him. His weight was enormous, all dense muscle and bone. I can't travel 3 miles like this. You're not coming. I'll go alone. Absolutely not. Ronan, you can barely stand. If we're both caught. If you're caught alone, you're dead, he interrupted. At least with me there, you have protection. Protection from a wolf who can't shift or fight? Elara shook her head. I've survived in these woods my whole life without a wolf. I can do this. She saw the war in his eyes, the instinct to protect versus the logic of her argument. Finally, he relented. How long will you be gone? 4 hours? Maybe 5? If you're not back by dawn, I'm coming after you. With a broken leg? I'll crawl if I have to. The fierce determination in his voice made something warm unfold in Elara's chest. No one had ever cared enough about her survival to make that kind of promise. I'll be back, she said quietly. I swear it. She gathered what she needed, her knife, a gathering bag, a small vial of fox urine to mask her scent from wolves. Then she hesitated at the door. Ronan? If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, the Royal Guard needs to know about Victor, about all of this. Elara, promise me, if I don't come back, you'll get word to your guard. Stop this conspiracy even if I'm not there to see it. Ronan met her eyes, and she saw the same fierce protectiveness she had heard in his voice. I promise, but you're coming back. Elara nodded and slipped out into the night. The forest was alive with danger. She could hear wolves in the distance, their howls carrying on the wind, search parties probably, looking for the rogue wolf that had attacked Victor's warriors. Elara moved like a shadow, using every trick her grandmother had taught her to stay invisible. The swamp was a treacherous place, even in daylight. At night, it was a nightmare of sinkholes, poisonous plants, and predators that hunted by sound. But silverroot only grew in the deepest, wettest parts, where most wolves refused to venture. Elara waded into the black water, feeling it seep through her boots and soak her clothes. The cold was immediate and brutal, leaching heat from her body with every step. She followed the landmarks her grandmother had taught her, the twisted oak, the rock formation that looked like a wolf's head, the cluster of white mushrooms. The silverroot grew in thick patches near the center of the swamp, its pale roots visible beneath the water's surface. Elara worked quickly, gathering as much as she could carry while keeping her head on a swivel for movement. That's when she heard voices. It has to be here somewhere. Victor wants it found before dawn. We've searched this whole sector. Maybe it went north. Or maybe it's smarter than we thought. Elara froze, water up to her knees, silverroot clutched in one hand. 3 wolves, maybe 50 yards away, moving through the swamp with grim determination. She had 2 choices: stay perfectly still and hope they missed her, or run and definitely draw their attention. Elara stayed still. The wolves passed within 20 feet of her hiding spot, so close she could smell them, wet fur, sweat, and the metallic tang of weapons. They were armed with silver blades, she realized. Not for hunting animals, for hunting the Alpha King. When their footsteps finally faded, Elara moved. She waded out of the swamp as quickly as silence allowed, silver root secured in her bag. But as she reached the forest edge, a new sound froze her in place. Screaming, coming from the direction of the lodge. Elara ran. She abandoned stealth entirely, crashing through the undergrowth with her heart in her throat. She'd been gone less than 3 hours. Dawn was still 2 hours away. Ronan was supposed to be safe. The lodge came into view, and Elara's world tilted. Wolves, at least a dozen of them, surrounding the structure. And standing at the entrance, illuminated by torchlight, was Cain Rendall. "Come out, rogue!" he shouted into the lodge. "We know you're in there!" No response from inside. Cain gestured, and 2 of his wolves hurled torches onto the roof. The old dry wood caught instantly, flames spreading with terrifying speed. They were going to burn Ronan alive. Elara's hands shook with rage and terror. She couldn't fight 12 wolves, couldn't stop the fire, couldn't save him. But she could create a distraction. The supply tent. It was maybe a quarter mile from here, and she'd seen barrels of oil stored there. If she could start a fire big enough, draw the wolves away from the lodge. Elara ran, faster than she'd ever run in her life. She reached the supply tent in minutes, grabbed one of the oil barrels, and hauled it toward the competition arena. Her muscles screamed, her lungs burned, but she didn't slow down. She placed the barrel at the base of the main pavilion, doused the canvas in oil, and struck her flint. The explosion of flame was visible for miles. Wolves howled in alarm, and Elara heard shouts from the direction of the lodge. She'd gotten their attention. Now she just had to pray Ronan could escape in the chaos. She ran back toward the lodge through a different route, staying low. The fire she'd started was spreading, consuming the pavilion and threatening the nearby tents. Wolves were everywhere, trying to contain the blaze, shouting orders, complete chaos. Through the smoke and confusion, she saw him. Ronan, limping badly but moving, using a broken beam as a makeshift crutch. He'd gotten out of the lodge before it collapsed entirely, but he was heading the wrong way, deeper into Ironshade territory, toward the pack compound, toward the heart of the assembly. Elara realized what he was doing. With the fire drawing everyone's attention, the compound would be nearly empty. It was the perfect time to search for evidence, to find proof of the conspiracy. It was also the most dangerous thing he could possibly do. She followed him, keeping to the shadows. Ronan moved with surprising speed despite his injury, driven by purpose and rage. He reached the compound's edge and paused, scanning for guards. There were only 2, and they were both watching the fire with their backs to the compound. Ronan slipped past them like a ghost and disappeared into the main hall. Elara's heart hammered. She couldn't follow him inside. If she was caught, there'd be no explaining her presence. But she couldn't leave him alone either. She found a position near the hall's side window where she could see inside without being spotted. The hall was empty except for Ronan, who was methodically searching Victor's private office. What he was looking for, Elara didn't know. But whatever it was, he found it. She saw him go rigid, staring at something on Victor's desk. Then he grabbed it, a leather journal by the looks of it, and shoved it inside his shirt. That's when the door opened. Victor Rendall walked in, flanked by 4 guards. The Ironshade Alpha was a massive man with silver hair and eyes like frozen steel. He stopped dead when he saw Ronan. "Well," Victor said slowly, "this is unexpected." Ronan straightened, hand moving to his belt where Elara knew he carried no weapon. "Victor, the Alpha King, in my office, stealing my personal property." Victor's smile was cold. "I'd wondered if you survived the river. Cain swore he saw a black wolf, but I thought he was imagining things." Cain saw exactly what he thought he saw. "And the wolfless girl, she's been helping you, I assume." Ronan said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Victor sighed. "Pity. I actually liked her grandmother. The old woman had spirit." His expression hardened. "But she made the same mistake you're making now. She got in my way." "You killed Marin," Ronan said flatly. "I had her killed. There's a difference." Victor stepped closer, his guards spreading out to block the exits. "Just like I'm going to have you killed. Again. Though this time, I'll make sure it takes." "The journal," Ronan said. "It details everything. The conspiracy. The other alphas involved. The plan to fracture the territories." Victor's smile widened. Very thorough, aren't I? That journal represents 5 years of careful planning. Alliances forged, weaknesses identified, pieces moved into position. He gestured to his guards. And now, the final piece. Your death, witnessed by my most loyal wolves. No more rumors of survival. No more hope for your precious united territories. The guards moved as one, shifting into their wolf forms. 4 against 1, and Ronan couldn't even shift. Elara's hand tightened on her knife. She couldn't watch this. Couldn't let Victor murder him while she hid like a coward. She burst through the window. Glass exploded inward as Elara rolled across Victor's desk and came up with her knife drawn. The guards hesitated, confused by this sudden intrusion. "Elara, no!" Ronan started. "Kill her first," Victor ordered. Then him. The nearest guard lunged, jaws open wide. Elara ducked under the attack and drove her knife into the wolf's shoulder. The blade scraped bone, and the wolf howled, stumbling back. Ronan grabbed a heavy wooden chair and swung it like a club, catching another guard across the head. The chair shattered, but the wolf went down hard. 2 left. They attacked together, moving with the coordination of trained killers. Elara dodged one, but the other's claws raked across her side, sending fire through her ribs. She gasped, stumbled. Ronan was there, broken leg and all, putting himself between her and the wolves. He had no weapons, no ability to shift, nothing but raw determination and fury. And it was enough. He fought like a demon, using his size and strength to compensate for his injuries. Grabbed one wolf by the throat and slammed it into the wall hard enough to crack stone. Caught the other's jaws before they could close on his arm and twisted until something snapped. Both guards went down, whimpering. Victor watched this with something like admiration. "Impressive. Even crippled, you're still the most dangerous wolf I've ever seen." He began to shift, his form expanding into something massive and silver. "But you can't shift, and I can." His transformation completed, and Elara's breath caught. Victor's wolf was enormous, easily 8 feet at the shoulder, with fangs like daggers and claws that could rend steel. This was an alpha in his prime, a warrior who'd killed dozens in his rise to power. And Ronan couldn't shift to meet him. "Run," Ronan told Elara quietly. "Take the journal. Get it to my royal guard. I'm not leaving you." "Elara," Victor attacked. The silver wolf moved like lightning, crossing the room in a heartbeat. Ronan tried to dodge, but his broken leg betrayed him. Victor's jaws closed around his shoulder and blood sprayed across the office walls. Elara screamed. She didn't think, just moved, throwing herself at Victor's hindquarters with her knife. The blade found flesh, sinking deep into the alpha's flank. Victor released Ronan with a howl of pain and rage. He spun, faster than anything that size should move, and his massive paw caught Elara across the chest. She flew backward, hit the wall, and the world went dark at the edges. Through the haze of pain, she saw Victor turning back to Ronan, saw him preparing to deliver the killing blow. "Enough!" The voice was thunder. It shook the walls, rattled the windows, carried a weight of command that made every wolf in the room freeze, including Victor. Ronan Draven stood, blood streaming from his shoulder, broken leg barely supporting his weight. But his eyes burned with power so ancient and absolute it made the air itself seem to bend around him. "I am the Alpha King," Ronan said, each word carrying the weight of an avalanche. "And you have committed treason against the throne." Victor snarled, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. The primal part of every wolf's brain recognized true dominance when it saw it. And despite his injuries, Ronan radiated dominance like heat from a forge. "You're dying," Victor growled. "I can smell the silver in your blood." "Then kill me," Ronan spread his arms. "Do it here, in front of witnesses. Murder your king in his own throne room. Because make no mistake, Victor, wherever I stand becomes my throne room. Go ahead. Strike me down." Victor hesitated. That hesitation was all Ronan needed. "Or surrender," Ronan said quietly. "Confess your conspiracy, name your co-conspirators, and I'll grant you a trial. A chance to defend yourself before the assembly. It's more mercy than you deserve." "Mercy?" Victor's laugh was bitter. "From the king who destroyed my brother's pack over a border dispute? Who shows no weakness, no compassion, only iron law and cold justice?" Your brother's pack was slaughtering human settlements, Ronan said flatly. He refused to stop when ordered. I did what was necessary. You did what was convenient. Victor's massive wolf form trembled with rage. Just like you'll do what's convenient now. You'll kill me, install a puppet alpha in Iron Shade, and continue ruling with your iron fist. Nothing will change. You're right, Ronan said. Nothing will change if I kill you, which is why I'm offering you the trial. Let the assembly decide your fate. Let the other alphas see that even kings must follow their own laws. For a long moment, Victor stared at him. Then, slowly, the silver wolf shifted back to human form. The journal, Victor said quietly. It names 4 other alphas. They're all here. All part of this. Ronan's expression didn't change. Names. Gareth Stone of Blackridge, Helena Cross of Frostmaw, Marcus Thorne of Shadowpine. Victor's voice was hollow. And my son, Cain. He was supposed to take my place after you died, and I claimed the Eastern Territories. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. 4 of the 5 packs, all working together to destroy the throne and fracture the territories. If they'd succeeded, the North would have torn itself apart. Why? Elara heard herself ask. Both wolves turned to look at her. Why risk civil war? Why kill thousands for territory? Victor's smile was sad. Because the strong take what they want. That's the law of our kind. The only law that matters. He looked at Ronan. You tried to change that. Tried to build something better. And maybe, in another life, it would have worked. It still can, Ronan said. No. Victor shook his head. The other alphas won't surrender. They'll fight to the death before admitting defeat. This ends in blood, Draven. It always ends in blood. Shouts from outside, wolves responding to the fight, drawn by the noise. They had seconds before the room flooded with warriors. Ronan grabbed Elara's hand. Can you run? She looked down at the gash across her ribs, felt the warm trickle of blood. I can try. Then we go. Now. They ran, Ronan limping badly, Elara clutching her side. Behind them, Victor made no move to follow. He just stood in his ruined office, surrounded by his fallen guards, waiting for his own wolves to arrive, waiting for his conspiracy to crumble. Elara and Ronan burst out of the compound into chaos. The fire she'd started had spread to 3 more pavilions, and wolves were everywhere. In the confusion, 2 more injured figures were barely noticed. They made it to the forest edge before Elara's legs gave out. She collapsed against a tree, her vision swimming. Stay with me, Ronan commanded, pressing his hand against her wound to slow the bleeding. Elara, stay with me. Did we win? She whispered. Ronan looked at the compound, at the flames lighting up the night sky, at the journal tucked in his shirt containing proof of the largest conspiracy in Northern Pack history. We survived, he said. That's close enough. Elara's eyes closed, and she felt Ronan lift her into his arms despite his own injuries. Felt him carry her deeper into the forest, away from the compound, away from the assembly, away from everything except survival. Behind them, Victor Rendell stood at his office window and watched them go. Then he threw back his head and howled, a sound of rage and grief and acceptance that echoed across the entire territory. The conspirators would hear that howl and know their plot had failed, and the hunt would begin again. The howl faded into silence, leaving only the crackle of distant flames and the sound of Ronan's labored breathing as he carried Elara deeper into the forest. She drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the steady rhythm of his steps and the warmth of his arms around her. Every jolt sent fire through her ribs, but she bit down on the pain, refusing to slow him down more than she already had. Stay awake, Ronan's voice cut through the fog. Talk to me, Elara. About what? The words came out slurred. Anything. Your grandmother. Your favorite memory. Just stay awake. Elara forced her eyes open, focusing on the stars visible through the canopy above. She used to take me into the forest. Before the pack turned on her, we'd spend whole days gathering herbs, and she'd tell me stories about wolves who could speak to the moon. Wolves don't speak to the moon. I know that now. But when I was 6, I believed every word. A weak laugh escaped her. I used to stand outside our cabin at night trying to hear what the moon was saying back. Ronan's grip tightened slightly. What did you hear? Nothing. Just wind and owls and my own disappointment. They walked in silence for another few minutes before Ronan stopped. Elara tried to see where they were, but the darkness was too complete. Where? Underground shelter, Ronan said, lowering himself carefully to his knees. Your grandmother showed it to me in her journals. She mapped every safe place within 20 miles of Iron Shade territory. Elara's mind struggled to process this. When did you read her journals? While you were gathering Silverroot. I needed to understand the terrain, find places we could hide if things went wrong. He shifted her weight and used one hand to clear away debris from what looked like solid ground. She was brilliant, your grandmother. These maps are more detailed than anything my scouts ever produced. Beneath the leaves and dirt, a wooden trapdoor emerged. Ronan pulled it open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. Can you climb? He asked. Elara looked at the ladder, at her own hands still slick with blood, and knew the answer. No. Then hold on. Ronan repositioned her on his back, her arms around his neck, and descended the ladder one-handed. Every movement made his broken leg scream. She could feel the tremors running through his body, but he didn't stop until they reached the bottom. The shelter was small, maybe 8 feet square, with walls of packed earth reinforced by timber beams. Someone had stocked it long ago with emergency supplies: water, dried food, blankets, medical kits. Her grandmother's doing, probably, preparing for a day she'd hoped would never come. Ronan laid Elara on a bedroll and immediately went to work on her wound. His hands were steady despite his own injuries, cleaning the gash with practiced efficiency. You're lucky, he said. It's deep but clean. Missed anything vital. Lucky? Elara repeated. I got hit by an alpha wolf, and you call it lucky. You're alive. That's lucky. He threaded a needle with surgical precision. This is going to hurt. It did. Elara gritted her teeth as Ronan stitched the wound closed, each pull of thread sending fresh waves of agony through her torso. But she didn't cry out, didn't flinch away. She'd survived worse pain with no one to help her at all. When he finished, Ronan sat back and finally allowed himself to examine his own injuries. His shoulder was torn open where Victor had bitten him, the edges ragged and deep. The broken leg was worse. The bone had shifted during the fight, and dark bruising spread from knee to hip. Your turn, Elara said, pushing herself upright despite the protest from her ribs. Sit still. Elara, you need to rest. And you need stitches before you bleed out. Sit. Still. Something like a smile crossed his face, but he obeyed. Elara worked slowly, her hands shaking from blood loss and exhaustion, but she got the job done. When she reached for his leg, Ronan caught her wrist. That needs to be reset properly. It's going to require shifting to heal correctly. You can't shift, not with silver still in your system. Most of it's gone thanks to your poultices. I can manage one shift. And if you're wrong, if there's enough silver left to poison you during the change. Ronan met her eyes. Then I die. But if I don't reset this leg, I'll be crippled, and a crippled king is a dead king. Elara wanted to argue, wanted to find another solution, but she knew he was right. In this world, weakness meant death. What do you need me to do? She asked quietly. Be ready to stabilize the leg the moment I shift back. The bone should align during the change, but it'll need support immediately after. Elara gathered the medical supplies, her heart hammering. She'd seen wolves shift dozens of times, but never one fighting against silver poisoning, never one where failure meant death. Ronan stood, bracing himself against the wall. He closed his eyes, and Elara felt the air around him change, felt the surge of power that preceded every shift. Then he screamed. The transformation was wrong from the start. Where it should have been smooth and instantaneous, this was violent and agonizing. Ronan's body fought itself, human and wolf warring for dominance while silver burned through his veins like acid. For a terrible moment, Elara thought he was going to die, thought the poison would stop his heart mid-shift, leaving him trapped between forms. Then the black wolf collapsed on the shelter floor, sides heaving, eyes glazed with pain. Ronan? Elara dropped to her knees beside him. Can you hear me? The wolf's eyes focused on her, and she saw recognition there, saw the iron will that had kept him alive through assassination attempts and silver poisoning and a fight with 4 trained killers. He shifted back. The second transformation was smoother, and when it completed, Ronan lay gasping on the bedroll. But his leg, The bone had aligned. The angle was right, the swelling already starting to reduce. "Splint," he managed. "Now!" Elara worked fast, binding the leg with wooden supports and tight wrapping. By the time she finished, Ronan had passed out from the pain. She covered him with blankets, checked his pulse and breathing, and finally allowed herself to collapse beside him. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, they'd survived. But Victor's howl still echoed in her memory. The conspirators knew their plot had failed, and they would come hunting. Elara let her eyes close, just for a moment. She woke to the smell of cooking meat. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the shelter's ceiling, painting stripes across the packed earth floor. Ronan sat near a small camp stove, tending to what looked like rabbit on a makeshift spit. "You're awake," he said without turning around. Elara sat up slowly, testing her wound. It hurt, but the pain was manageable. "You should be resting." "I've been resting for 6 hours. Any longer and I'll go mad." He glanced at her, and she saw that his color was better, the fevered gleam gone from his eyes. "How do you feel?" "Like I got mauled by an alpha wolf." "Accurate." He pulled the meat from the fire and divided it onto 2 metal plates scavenged from the supplies. "Eat. We need to move soon." Elara accepted the food, her stomach growling. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. "Where did you get fresh rabbit?" "Set a snare at the entrance before dawn. Your grandmother's journals had detailed instructions." "Of course they did." Elara took a bite, savoring the simple pleasure of hot food. "What's the plan?" Ronan pulled Victor's journal from his shirt. Somehow it had survived everything, and set it between them. "This contains evidence of conspiracy involving 4 of the 5 northern alphas. Names, dates, agreements, enough to prove treason a dozen times over. So we take it to the assembly, present it publicly." "We could, but Victor's already confessed to his own wolves. By now, every conspirator knows we have this journal." Ronan's expression was grim. "They'll kill us before we get within a mile of the assembly grounds." Elara's hope deflated. "Then what do we do?" "We don't go to the assembly." Ronan's eyes gleamed with cold calculation. "We bring the assembly to us." Over the next hour, he laid out his plan. It was audacious, dangerous, and relied on a level of precision that seemed impossible given their circumstances. But the more Elara listened, the more she understood why this man was the Alpha King. "The negotiations happen tonight," Ronan explained. "All 5 alphas will be in the Great Hall, along with their heirs and advisors. Victor will be there under guard, but the others, Gareth, Helena, Marcus, they'll be free, confident. Because they think you're dead or dying somewhere in the forest." "Exactly. And that confidence will make them careless." He tapped the journal. "I need to get this evidence to someone who can present it. Someone the assembly will believe." "Your royal guard." "They're 3 days away." "We don't have 3 days." Ronan leaned forward. "But there is one person at the assembly who might help. Someone with the authority to call for a public hearing and the integrity to act on evidence, even if it implicates powerful alphas." "Who?" "Elder Cassian. He served as the Assembly's chief arbiter for 30 years, no pack affiliation, no political allegiances. If anyone can be trusted to do what's right, it's him." Elara frowned. "How do we get the journal to him without being caught?" "We don't. You do." The words hung in the air between them. "Me?" Elara's voice came out small. "Ronan, I'm wolfless. They won't even let me into the Great Hall." "Which is why you won't use the front entrance." He pulled a hand-drawn map from the journal, another gift from her grandmother's meticulous record-keeping. "There's a service passage that runs beneath the Great Hall, used for delivering supplies during large gatherings. It connects to the Elder's private quarters. You want me to break into Elder Cassian's rooms and convince him to trust evidence from a wolfless outcast he's never met. I want you to do what you've done since the moment I met you." Ronan's gaze was intense. "Survive impossible odds through courage and intelligence. You've saved my life 3 times, Elara. You've defied your own pack, risked execution, and stood against an alpha in his prime. If anyone can do this, it's you. And what will you be doing while I'm infiltrating the assembly?" Ronan's smile was sharp as a blade. "Creating a distraction they won't soon forget." They spent the afternoon preparing. Ronan taught Elara the formal phrases she'd need to approach an elder, the protocol that might keep her alive long enough to explain herself. In return, she changed his bandages and adjusted his splint, strengthening it for what was coming. As sunset approached, they climbed out of the shelter and made their way through the forest toward Iron Shade territory. Ronan moved better now, the shift having accelerated his healing, but he was still far from full strength. They stopped at the edge of the forest, looking down at the pack compound. It was transformed for the negotiations. Every building lit with torches, wolves in formal dress moving between structures, an air of ceremony that felt almost sacred. "The service entrance is there," Ronan said, pointing to a small door on the north side of the great hall. "2 guards, rotating shifts every hour. The next rotation happens in 20 minutes. And your distraction? We'll begin the moment you're inside." He turned to face her fully. "Elara, if something goes wrong, if you're caught, don't mention my name. Let them think you're working alone. They'll execute me either way, but they won't hunt me. And I can still get this evidence to my guard, still stop the conspiracy." His hand found hers. "Promise me." Elara looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between his scarred warrior's grip and her healer's fingers. "I promise, but only if you promise the same. If something happens to you, it won't. Promise anyway." Ronan's jaw tightened, then he nodded. "I promise." They waited in tense silence as the minutes ticked by. When the guard rotation finally happened, Ronan squeezed her hand once and disappeared into the shadows. Elara approached the service entrance alone. The 2 new guards were young, barely past their first shift. They watched her approach with confusion rather than hostility. "What's your business?" one asked. Elara kept her head down, submissive. "Supplies for the kitchens. Elder Cassian requested fresh silverleaf for his tea." "The kitchens are on the other side of the compound. The other entrance is blocked by the ceremony preparations. I was told to use this door." The guards exchanged glances. One shrugged. "Fine, but make it quick." They let her pass. Elara descended into the service passages, her heart hammering. The corridors were narrow and poorly lit, clearly designed for servants to move unseen. She followed the map in her memory, counting doorways and turning at the landmarks Ronan had described. She was halfway to Elder Cassian's quarters when she heard voices ahead. "Can't believe Victor was stupid enough to get caught. Doesn't matter. Once the king's confirmed dead, we proceed with the plan." Elara pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. 2 wolves passed within feet of her hiding spot, so focused on their conversation, they never looked in her direction. "Helena's ready to claim the northern territories. Marcus wants the trade routes. We'll have everything we need. If Gareth doesn't try to take it all for himself, he wouldn't dare, not with—" Their voices faded as they turned a corner. Elara waited another minute, then continued forward. Elder Cassian's quarters were marked by an ornate door carved with symbols of the moon and forest. Elara knocked quietly, praying he was alone. The door opened. Elder Cassian was a small, wiry man with silver hair and eyes that had seen decades of pack politics. He looked at Elara with surprise but no hostility. "Child, you shouldn't be here." "I know, Elder, but I have information about the Alpha King." Elara pulled the journal from her shirt. "Evidence of conspiracy involving 4 pack alphas. Please, you need to see this." Cassian's eyes sharpened. He glanced down the corridor, then pulled Elara inside and shut the door. "Speak quickly." Elara laid out everything: the assassination attempt, finding Ronan in the river, Victor's confession, the journal's contents. Cassian listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished, he took the journal and flipped through it slowly. His hands trembled as he read Victor's careful documentation of treason. "This is—" He trailed off, unable to find words. "This is the end of everything we've built. The entire alliance. Destroyed. Or saved," Elara said quietly. "If you present this evidence tonight, call for a public hearing, force the conspirators to answer for their crimes in front of the assembly. They'll deny it, claim the journal is forged. Victor already confessed to his own wolves. Others heard him." Cassian's eyes met hers. "And the Alpha King? You say he's alive?" "He is. And he's here. Here. At the compound?" Before Elara could answer, an explosion shook the building. Cassian rushed to the window. Elara followed, and her breath caught. Fire bloomed in the center of the competition arena, spreading across the carefully constructed platforms and pavilions. But this wasn't random destruction. The flames formed a pattern, a symbol that every wolf in the Northern Territories would recognize. The royal crest, the Alpha King's personal seal. Impossible, Cassian breathed. The king is dead. Victor said. Victor lied. Elara's voice was steady. And Ronan Draven is about to prove it. In the arena, a massive black wolf emerged from the flames. Even from a distance, even surrounded by chaos, there was no mistaking him. The size, the bearing, the absolute authority that radiated from every movement. The Alpha King had returned, and he was furious. Wolves poured out of the great hall, drawn by the fire and the impossible sight. Elara saw the conspirators among them, Gareth Stone's military precision as he organized his wolves, Helena Cross's cold calculation as she assessed the threat, Marcus Thorne's barely contained rage. And in the center of it all, Ronan stood in human form now, leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch but unbowed. His voice carried across the compound with supernatural clarity. I am Ronan Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I was ambushed, poisoned, and left for dead by wolves who swore oaths of loyalty to the throne. He gestured to the burning arena. But I survived, and I have come to claim justice for treason. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Gareth Stone stepped forward, flanked by a dozen armed warriors. We buried your body 3 days ago, Your Majesty. Whoever you are, this impersonation ends now. Does it? Ronan's smile was cold. Then explain the royal seal burning in your precious arena. Explain how a mere impersonator knows the details of your conspiracy with Victor Rendall. Explain how I carry the mark of the Alpha King. He pulled aside his shirt, revealing his chest. Even from the window, Elara could see the mark, a birthmark in the shape of a wolf's head that every Alpha King bore, passed down through bloodline since the first king. No impersonator could fake that. Gareth's confidence wavered. Helena and Marcus exchanged glances, their plan crumbling before their eyes. Elder Cassian! Ronan's voice rang out. I call for a formal hearing before the assembly. I have evidence of conspiracy, treason, and attempted regicide. Will you honor that call? All eyes turned to the great hall, to the window where Cassian stood frozen. Elara touched his arm. This is your moment, Elder. Choose justice or choose politics. But choose now. Cassian looked at her, at the journal in his hands, at the Alpha King standing in the ruins of a conspiracy. She saw the war in his eyes, the safe path versus the right one. Then he straightened his shoulders and opened the window wider. I acknowledge your call, Alpha King. His voice carried across the compound with surprising strength. The assembly will convene for a formal hearing. All parties will present evidence. All accused will have the right to defend themselves. He turned to his attendants. Ring the assembly bell. Summon every alpha, every heir, every witness. We gather in 1 hour. The bell began to toll, its deep notes echoing across the territory. There was no turning back now. Elara watched as Ronan began making his way toward the great hall, surrounded by neutral guards for his protection. The conspirators were being detained, their weapons confiscated, their protests ignored. You did this, Cassian said quietly. A wolfless girl, defying every law of our kind to save a king. I did what needed to be done. They'll never accept you, you know. Even if the king survives this, even if justice is served, you'll always be the outsider who doesn't belong. Elara thought about that. Thought about a lifetime of being invisible, worthless, a ghost among her own people. Then she thought about Ronan's hand in hers, his trust when he should have had none, his promise that she mattered. Maybe I don't need their acceptance, she said. Maybe I just need to know I did the right thing. Cassian studied her for a long moment. Then he handed her the journal. Come. The assembly will want to hear your testimony, and I suspect the Alpha King will want you at his side when justice is delivered. They walked through the corridors together, the wolfless outcast and the elder arbiter, heading toward a hearing that would reshape the Northern Territories forever. Behind them, the service passages fell silent. And ahead, in the great hall filling with wolves, Ronan Draven waited to face his enemies one final time. The assembly bell tolled its final note, and the hearing began. The great hall had been transformed into a tribunal. 5 chairs stood at the center, one for each alpha, surrounded by rows of witnesses and observers. Armed guards lined the walls, neutral wolves sworn to protect the proceedings regardless of political allegiance. Ronan sat in the Alpha King's chair, still bearing his injuries, but radiating an authority that made every wolf in the room instinctively lower their eyes. To his right stood Elder Cassian, holding Victor's journal like a holy text. And to his left, in a position that made every ranked wolf in the room stiffen with shock, stood Elara. "This is an outrage!" Helena Cross stood, her elegant features twisted with fury. "That wolfless creature has no place in an assembly hearing." "That wolfless creature," Ronan said quietly, "saved my life 3 times and exposed your conspiracy. She has earned her place here more than you've earned yours, Helena." The rebuke was sharp enough to make Helena sit down, though her eyes promised murder. Cassian cleared his throat. "We are here to examine evidence of conspiracy against the Alpha King. The accused are Victor Rendall of Ironshade, Gareth Stone of Black Ridge, Helena Cross of Frostmaw, and Marcus Thorne of Shadowpine." He opened the journal. "Let the record show that evidence has been provided in the form of Victor Rendall's personal documentation." "Forged evidence," Gareth interjected smoothly. "Anyone could have written those entries." "Could anyone have replicated Victor's handwriting perfectly?" Cassian held up a page next to an official Ironshade document. "The script matches exactly. The seal on each page is Victor's personal mark." "Then Victor wrote it under duress. The king could have forced him." "I wrote it freely," Victor interrupted, his voice heavy with resignation. "Every word is true. I conspired with these 3 to assassinate Ronan Draven and fracture the Northern Alliance." He looked at his co-conspirators. "And before you deny it, know that I've already given Elder Cassian the names of every wolf involved, every meeting location, every plan we made over 5 years." The silence was deafening. Marcus Thorne stood slowly, his massive frame trembling with barely controlled rage. "You spineless coward! We had an agreement, we had a conspiracy," Victor corrected. "One that failed. And I won't compound my crimes by letting innocent wolves die for our mistakes." "Innocent?" Marcus snarled. "There are no innocent wolves in this." We all knew what we were doing, what it would cost, including the thousands who would have died in the Civil War. Ronan's voice cut through the argument like a blade. "The families torn apart, the territories destroyed, the decades of peace shattered. Did you consider that cost, Marcus? Or were you too focused on avenging a mate whose death I did not cause?" Marcus's face went white. "You dare!" "I dare state fact. Your mate was killed by Shadowpine wolves during an internal dispute over succession. I ruled against you because the evidence was clear. But instead of accepting that ruling, you nursed your grief into hatred and let it poison you into treason." "You don't know what it's like," Marcus whispered, "to lose your mate, to have your world torn apart and be told it was your own pack's fault." "You're right, I don't." Ronan's voice softened slightly. "But I know what it's like to carry the weight of thousands of lives on your shoulders, to make decisions that leave wolves dead and families broken because it's the least terrible option available. That's what leadership is, Marcus. Not revenge, not personal satisfaction. It's choosing the path that saves the most lives, even when it costs you everything." For a moment, something like understanding flickered across Marcus's face. Then it hardened back into rage. "Easy to say when you're the one making the choices," he growled. "When you're the one with all the power." "Is it?" Ronan gestured to his injuries, to Elara standing beside him. "I nearly died in a river because wolves I trusted put silver in my veins. I survived only because a wolfless girl defied her entire pack to save a rogue wolf she had every reason to fear." "Where's the power in that, Marcus? Where's the control?" He stood, leaning heavily on his crutch but unbowed. "The truth is, none of us control as much as we think we do. Not me, not you, not any alpha in this room. We're all just trying to survive in a world that's brutal and unfair and determined to break us." His eyes swept the assembled wolves. "But we can choose how we respond to that brutality. We can choose revenge and violence and endless cycles of hatred, or we can choose something better." "Like what?" Helena's voice dripped with scorn. "Unity. Peace? Those are pretty words, Your Majesty, but they don't put food on the table or protect our territories from threats. No, strength does that. Real strength." Ronan looked at Elara, the kind that pulls dying wolves from rivers, The kind that stands against alphas with nothing but courage and a rusty knife. The kind that survives impossible odds, not through dominance, but through intelligence and compassion, and the refusal to become the very monsters we fear. Elara felt every eye in the room turn to her, felt the weight of their judgment, their disbelief that this broken king was holding her up as an example. But she also felt Ronan's absolute certainty, his unshakable belief that she represented something worth fighting for. "You want to kill me for the throne?" Ronan continued. "Fine. Challenge me openly, by assembly law. Fight me in the arena and prove your strength, but don't hide behind conspiracies and poison and assassination. Don't tear apart everything we've built, because you're too afraid to face me directly." Gareth Stone rose to his feet, his military bearing perfect despite the circumstances. "You're in no condition to fight, Your Majesty. Even a blind wolf could see that. Then it should be an easy victory for you." The challenge hung in the air, impossible and insane. Ronan could barely walk. Fighting even one alpha would likely kill him. "I accept," Gareth said immediately. "As do I," Helena added. Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "And I." Victor remained seated, his expression haunted. "I will not fight you, Draven. I've done enough damage." Elder Cassian stepped forward. "This is madness. The king is severely injured. Multiple challenges would be justice," Ronan interrupted. "They want the throne? Let them take it, by law, by combat, witnessed by the assembly." He looked at the conspirators. "But know this, if you win, you'll inherit a fractured alliance held together only by my authority. The other packs won't follow you. They'll see you as usurpers who killed a wounded king rather than face him at full strength. You'll get your throne, and it will be worthless." "And if you win?" Gareth asked. Ronan's smile was cold. "Then you accept that real strength isn't about dominance. It's about surviving when everything says you should be dead. It's about making impossible choices and living with the consequences. It's about being the king these territories need, not the tyrant you would have become." He looked at Cassian. "Set it for tomorrow night. Give me 1 day to heal, and make it public. Every pack, every witness. Let everyone see how this ends." Cassian's face was pale. "Your Majesty, I must protest." Protest noted and overruled. The challenges are accepted. Ronan turned to Elara. "Get me somewhere I can rest. I have a lot of healing to do before tomorrow." As they left the great hall, Elara heard the whispers beginning, saw the looks of shock, fear, and something that might have been respect. The wolfless girl and the broken king walking side by side toward battles they had almost no chance of winning. Outside, the night air was cold and clear. "You're going to die," Elara said quietly. "Probably." "Then why accept the challenges?" Ronan stopped, turned to face her. "Because they needed to see that I'm not afraid, that even wounded, even poisoned, even at my weakest, I'm still the Alpha King. And that title means something beyond physical dominance. It means suicide. It means hope." His hand found hers. "Tomorrow, when I walk into that arena, every wolf who ever felt weak or powerless or less than will see me fight. They'll see that strength comes in forms they never imagined. And maybe, just maybe, they'll believe they can survive their own impossible battles." Elara looked at their joined hands, at the impossible man who'd turned her entire world upside down. "You're insane," she said. "Completely." Ronan's smile was gentle. "But I'm also right. You proved that when you saved me from the river. Sometimes the insane choice is the only one worth making." They walked through the compound in silence, heading for the guest quarters Cassian had assigned them. Around them, wolves stared and whispered, but no one challenged them. Not yet. Tomorrow would bring challenges enough. But tonight, for the first time since this began, Elara felt something she'd never experienced before. She felt like she belonged somewhere, and that somewhere was standing right beside her, broken and bleeding and absolutely unbreakable. The guest quarters were modest by Alpha standards. A single room with a bed, a wash basin, and a window overlooking the forest. But to Elara, who'd spent her life in a crumbling cabin, it felt like luxury. Ronan collapsed onto the bed the moment they entered, his strength finally giving out. Elara locked the door and immediately went to work checking his injuries. "The stitches held," she said, examining his shoulder. "But you reopened something in your leg during the challenge. You're bleeding again." "It can wait until morning." "It can't? and it won't. Elara grabbed the medical supplies Cassian had provided and knelt beside the bed. You have 3 fights tomorrow, 3 alphas in their prime, and you can barely stand. We need every advantage we can get. Ronan watched her work in silence for a moment. Then, you said we. Elara's hand stilled. What? You said we need every advantage, not you. We. She resumed cleaning the wound, refusing to meet his eyes. You're the one fighting. I'm just the healer. You're more than that, and you know it. His hand caught hers, stilling her movements. Elara, look at me. She did, reluctantly. His blue eyes were intense, searching. What happens tomorrow, win or lose, changes everything, he said quietly. If I survive, I'll need wolves I can trust absolutely. Wolves who've proven their loyalty beyond question. And if I don't survive, don't. The word came out sharper than she intended. Don't talk like you've already lost. I'm being realistic. 3 fights in my condition, the odds aren't good. The odds weren't good when I pulled you from the river. They weren't good when we faced Victor's wolves. They weren't good when you stood in that arena tonight and challenged 3 alphas to combat. Elara's voice was fierce. But we're still here, still alive, so stop talking about losing and start planning how to win. Something like wonder crossed Ronan's face. You really believe I can do this? I believe you're the most stubborn, impossible, infuriating wolf I've ever met, and I believe that if anyone can survive tomorrow, it's you. The corner of his mouth lifted. Stubborn and infuriating, that's quite the endorsement. It's the truth. Elara finished bandaging his leg and sat back. Now tell me about your opponents, their fighting styles, their weaknesses. If we only have 1 night to prepare, let's use it. They worked through the night. Ronan described each alpha in detail. Gareth's military precision, Helena's speed and cunning, Marcus's raw power and unpredictable rage. He walked Elara through fighting techniques, explained the rules of formal challenges, and detailed exactly what she should do if things went wrong. If I fall, he said as dawn approached, you go straight to Elder Cassian. He'll protect you until my royal guard arrives. And then what? They install a new king and I go back to being a wolfless outcast? No. Then you tell them everything that happened here. You make sure Victor and the conspirators face justice. And you, he hesitated. You live, Elara. You find somewhere safe, and you live. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that safety didn't exist for wolves like her. But exhaustion was pulling at both of them, and there were only a few hours left before the first challenge. Rest, she said instead. I'll keep watch. Ronan's eyes were already closing. Wake me an hour before dawn. And Elara, thank you for everything. She watched him sleep, this impossible king who'd turned her life upside down. Then she moved to the window and stared out at the forest, trying not to think about how empty the world would feel if he didn't survive tomorrow. The arena had been rebuilt overnight. Where fire had consumed the competition platforms, workers had erected a single massive ring, 60 feet across, surrounded by tiered seating that could hold hundreds of witnesses. By midday, every seat was filled. Elara stood in the preparation area beneath the arena, helping Ronan wrap his hands for the fight. His leg was still splinted, but he'd reinforced it with metal supports that would let him put weight on it without collapsing. It wouldn't be enough against trained fighters, but it was all they had. First challenge is Gareth, Ronan said, testing his weight distribution. He'll fight defensively, try to wear me down for the others. I need to end it fast. And if you can't, then I survive as long as possible and hope for an opening. He looked at her. Whatever happens up there, don't interfere. If they think you're helping me, they'll kill you. I'm not going to just watch you die. Yes, you are, because that's what I need you to do. His voice was steel. Promise me, Elara. She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him she'd fight beside him, rules be damned. But she saw the desperation in his eyes, the fear not for himself but for her. I promise, she whispered. The bell rang, summoning them to the arena. The crowd's roar was deafening as Ronan limped into the ring. He wore simple fighting clothes, no armor, no weapons, nothing but his own strength. Across from him, Gareth Stone stood in his prime, a warrior who'd fought in dozens of territorial disputes and never lost. Elder Cassian stood at the ring's center, his voice magically amplified to reach every witness. This is a formal challenge for the throne. Gareth Stone of Blackridge versus Ronan Draven, Alpha King. The fight continues until one opponent yields or is unable to continue. Are both parties ready? Ready, Gareth said. Ronan simply nodded. Then begin. Gareth moved with military precision, circling to Ronan's wounded side. He was testing, probing, looking for weaknesses. Ronan turned to keep him in view, his broken leg forcing him to shift his weight awkwardly. Then Gareth attacked. He came in fast and low, going for the injured leg. Ronan barely managed to deflect, taking the hit on his forearm instead. The impact sent him stumbling backward, and Gareth pressed the advantage with a combination of strikes that drove Ronan toward the ring's edge. The crowd was screaming now, scenting blood. Ronan blocked desperately, his movement slowed by injury and exhaustion. Gareth's fist caught him in the ribs, and Elara heard bone crack even from the preparation area. Yield, Gareth said. You've proven your courage. Now yield before I'm forced to kill you. Ronan's answer was a savage headbutt that broke Gareth's nose. The Blackridge Alpha staggered back, blood streaming down his face. Ronan followed despite the agony in his leg, pressing forward with a series of strikes that had Gareth retreating. You want the throne? Ronan's voice carried across the arena. Then take it. Stop dancing and fight me like you mean it. Gareth's eyes blazed. His next attack was pure fury, abandoning precision for raw power. They traded blows in the center of the ring, neither giving ground, both bleeding from a dozen wounds. Then Ronan shifted his stance, favoring his good leg, and Gareth took the bait. He drove forward, putting all his strength behind a strike aimed at Ronan's broken leg. But Ronan was already moving, pivoting on his good leg and using Gareth's momentum against him. His elbow caught Gareth's temple with surgical precision. The Blackridge Alpha went down hard and didn't get up. The arena fell silent. Then, Elder Cassian's voice. Gareth Stone is unable to continue. Victory to Ronan Draven. The second challenge begins in 1 hour. Elara rushed to Ronan the moment he left the ring. He was bleeding from his mouth, his ribs were broken, and he could barely breathe. 1 down, he gasped. 2 to go. You can't fight Helena in this condition. You need medical attention. I need to win. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip desperate. Elara, if I stop now, if I show any weakness, they'll tear me apart. I have to finish this. She wanted to argue, wanted to drag him to safety, and damn the consequences. But she saw the truth in his eyes. This wasn't about pride or stubbornness. This was about proving that strength came in forms these wolves had never imagined. Then let me help, she said. The next hour, let me do what I do best. Elara worked with frantic precision. She splinted his broken ribs, applied numbing poultices to the worst injuries, and forced him to drink a concoction that would give him a temporary burst of energy. It wouldn't last long, but it might be enough. The bell rang too soon. Helena Cross waited in the ring, elegant and deadly. Where Gareth had been a soldier, Helena was an assassin, fast, cunning, and utterly ruthless. She smiled when Ronan limped in, looking at him like prey. I'll make this quick, she said. You've suffered enough. Then start suffering. Helena moved like water, flowing around Ronan's defenses and striking from impossible angles. She didn't try to overpower him. She bled him with 1,000 cuts, each one precise, each one weakening him further. Ronan fought back, but he was slower now, the numbing poultices dulling his reactions. Helena's claws raked across his back, opened a gash on his thigh, sliced through his shoulder. The crowd was on its feet, sensing the kill. Then Helena made a mistake. She went for his throat, committing fully to the strike, and Ronan caught her wrist. For a moment they were frozen. Helena's claws inches from his jugular, Ronan's hand locked around her wrist like iron. Then he twisted, hard and fast, and her wrist snapped. Helena screamed and stumbled back, cradling her broken wrist. Ronan didn't give her time to recover. He closed the distance and delivered a palm strike to her solar plexus that emptied her lungs. She collapsed, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Yield, Ronan said quietly. Helena's eyes blazed with fury, but she nodded. She yielded. Helena Cross has yielded, Cassian announced. Victory to Ronan Draven. The final challenge begins in 1 hour. This time, when Ronan left the ring, he couldn't walk. Elara had to support him, bearing most of his weight as they returned to the preparation area. I can't do this again, he said, his voice barely audible. Elara, I don't have another fight in me. Yes, you do. She lowered him onto a bench and began working on his new injuries. You have exactly one more fight, and you're going to win it. Marcus is twice my size and half my age. Even at full strength, you'd still beat him because you're smarter, more experienced, and you've survived things that would have killed him. Elara met his eyes. But you need to stop fighting like a warrior and start fighting like a king. What's the difference? A warrior tries to overpower his opponent. A king makes his opponent defeat himself. Ronan stared at her, understanding dawning in his eyes. Marcus's rage. If I can make him angry enough, he'll make mistakes. And that's when you strike. Elara finished bandaging his worst wounds. You have 1 hour. Use it to rest, not to worry. But Ronan didn't rest. He sat in silence, eyes closed, conserving every ounce of strength he had left. And Elara watched him, this impossible man who refused to stay down, and felt something fierce and protective bloom in her chest. She loved him. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She loved this broken king who saw value in a wolfless girl, loved his stubborn courage, his refusal to give up, his absolute certainty that she mattered, and that meant she couldn't let him face Marcus alone. The final bell rang. Marcus Thorne stood in the ring like a monument to violence. He was massive, 7 feet tall with shoulders like a bear and fists that could break stone. His eyes burned with 5 years of accumulated rage, all of it focused on the wounded king limping toward him. This ends now, Draven, Marcus growled. For my mate. For everything you took from me. I took nothing from you, Ronan said quietly. But I understand grief. I understand rage. And I understand that killing me won't bring her back. But it'll feel good. Marcus attacked with the fury of a winter storm. His fists were sledgehammers, each strike capable of killing. Ronan dodged desperately, using what was left of his mobility to stay out of range. But he was too slow, too injured. Marcus's fist caught him in the chest, and Ronan flew backward, hit the ground hard, and didn't get up. The crowd roared. Marcus advanced slowly, savoring the moment. Stay down, Draven. Die with whatever dignity you have left. Ronan tried to rise and collapsed, tried again, made it to his knees, and fell. Elara's hands clenched on the railing. He was done. Finished. One more hit would kill him. She looked at the ring, at Marcus preparing to deliver the final blow, at Ronan struggling to stand and failing, and she broke her promise. Elara vaulted the railing and ran into the ring. The crowd's roar turned to shocked silence. Marcus stopped mid-stride, staring at this wolfless girl who'd just violated every law of formal combat. What are you doing? Ronan's voice was desperate. Elara, get out of here. She ignored him, walked straight to Marcus and looked up at the massive alpha. You want to kill him for taking your mate? She said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. Then kill me too, because I'm the one who saved him. I pulled him from the river. I hid him. I helped him expose the conspiracy. If you want revenge, I'm just as responsible. Marcus stared down at her, confusion warring with rage. You're nothing, a wolfless freak with no pack, no power, no reason to exist. Why would I waste my strength on you? Because I'm exactly what your mate was. Elara's voice was steel. A wolf who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, who died because powerful wolves decided her life didn't matter. You want to honor her memory? Then don't become the thing that killed her. Don't let rage turn you into a monster. You don't know anything about her. I know she wouldn't want this. Elara gestured to the arena, to Ronan bleeding on the ground. I know she'd hate seeing you throw away everything you built together for revenge that won't change anything. And I know that if you kill him now, if you kill us both, you'll prove every terrible thing he ruled about that day. You'll prove that Shadowpine wolves are driven by violence and rage, not justice. Marcus's massive hands clenched into fists. Get out of the ring. No, I'll kill you both. Then do it, Elara shouted. Prove you're the monster Ronan said you weren't. Prove that strength is just violence. Prove that everything he's fought for, everything she died for, was meaningless. For a long moment, Marcus just stood there, trembling with barely contained fury. Then, slowly, he looked at Ronan. Is this what you meant? He asked quietly. About choosing how we respond to brutality? Ronan had managed to pull himself to his feet, leaning heavily on Elara for support. Yes. And if I choose mercy? If I let you live? What then? Then you prove that strength isn't about dominance. It's about making impossible choices and living with them. Ronan met his eyes. Your mate died because of a system that valued violence over justice. Help me build something better. Help me create a world where wolves like her, wolves like Elara, don't have to die for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Marcus looked at them, the broken king and the wolfless girl holding each other up in the center of the arena. Then he looked at the crowd, at the hundreds of wolves watching this moment, and he knelt. I yield, he said, his voice carrying across the stunned silence. Not because you beat me, but because you're right. About all of it. The arena erupted. Wolves were on their feet, some cheering, others shouting protest. Elder Cassian had to magically amplify his voice to be heard over the chaos. Marcus Thorne has yielded. All 3 challenges have been met. Victory to Ronan Draven, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. But Ronan was already collapsing. The last of his strength gave out, and he went down hard. Elara caught him, lowering him to the ground as healers rushed into the ring. Did we win? He whispered. We won, she confirmed, tears streaming down her face. We won everything. His eyes closed, and he didn't open them again. For 3 days, Ronan lay in a healing sleep while his body fought to recover from injuries that should have killed him. Elara never left his side, changing his bandages and monitoring his vital signs with the precision her grandmother had taught her. The Northern Territories were in chaos. Victor had been executed for treason after a formal trial. Gareth and Helena had been stripped of their alpha titles and exiled. Marcus had been allowed to keep his position in exchange for complete cooperation with the investigation. And Elara, the wolfless girl who defied every law to save a king, was suddenly the most talked about wolf in the North. Some called her a hero. Others called her an abomination who'd corrupted the Alpha King. Elder Cassian had posted guards outside her quarters to keep the worst of them away. But she didn't care about any of that. She only cared about the man in the bed, fighting to survive. On the 4th day, Ronan's eyes opened. Elara, he croaked. She was at his side instantly. Don't try to move. You're healing, but you're not recovered. How long? 4 days. Your royal guard arrived yesterday. They're handling the political fallout. Ronan absorbed this, then looked at her with surprising clarity. You broke your promise. You interfered in the fight. I did. You could have been killed. I know. And you did it anyway. Yes. Elara met his gaze steadily. Because watching you die wasn't an option. Not for politics, not for honor, not for anything. Ronan was quiet for a moment. Then he reached for her hand. The assembly is demanding answers. About us. About what you are to me. Elara's heart clenched. This was it. The moment where he thanked her for her service and sent her away. Where the impossible dream ended and reality reasserted itself. What am I to you? She asked, her voice barely audible. Everything. The word was simple, absolute. You're my conscience when I'd choose easy violence, my courage when I'd choose despair, my proof that strength comes in forms I never imagined. He squeezed her hand. You're the wolf I choose, Elara Vale, if you'll have me. The world stopped. Have you? She whispered. Ronan, I'm wolfless. I have no pack, no rank, no bloodline. I can't give you heirs, can't shift to defend you, can't be the queen these territories expect. I don't want the queen they expect. I want the woman who pulled a dying wolf from a river because it was the right thing to do, the woman who stood between me and an alpha twice her size, the woman who proved that real strength has nothing to do with fangs or claws. Tears were streaming down Elara's face now. They'll never accept me. Then they'll learn to. Ronan's smile was fierce. I'm the Alpha King. I survived assassination, silver poisoning, and 3 formal challenges while barely able to stand. If I can do that, I can damn well convince the Northern Territories to accept the woman I love as their queen. You love me? Desperately. Completely. Against all logic and reason. His thumb traced circles on her hand. I fell in love with you the moment you risked your life to save mine. Everything after that just proved I was right to. Elara leaned down and kissed him, gentle and careful of his injuries, but absolutely certain. When she pulled back, Ronan's eyes blazed with warmth. "Is that a yes?" he asked. "That's a yes to everything," she whispered. "To you, to this, to whatever impossible future we're building together." "Good. Because I have plans, and they all involve you." 2 weeks later, the Northern Territories gathered for an unprecedented assembly. Not for challenges or negotiations, but for a coronation. Ronan stood at the center of the Great Hall, fully healed now, wearing the ceremonial robes of the Alpha King. To his left stood Marcus Thorne, who'd accepted a position as royal advisor. To his right stood Elder Cassian, holding a crown forged from northern steel. And before them all, wearing a simple white dress that somehow made her look regal, stood Elara. "Elara Val," Cassian's voice rang out. "You stand before the assembly as a wolfless human in a society of shifters. By all traditional measures, you have no place here. No rank, no pack, no bloodline to claim." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elara kept her head high, refusing to show fear. "And yet," Cassian continued, "you have proven yourself worthy a dozen times over. You saved the Alpha King's life. You exposed a conspiracy that threatened to plunge us into civil war. You stood in the arena and reminded us all that strength comes in many forms." He turned to the assembled Alphas, new leaders who'd been appointed after the conspirators' fall. "Do any here object to this woman becoming our queen?" Silence. Not welcoming, not warm, but not hostile either. Acceptance, earned through blood and courage. Cassian turned back to Elara. "Then by the authority granted me as Elder Arbiter, and with the unanimous consent of the Northern Alphas, I ask, Elara Vale, do you accept the responsibilities of queenship? Do you swear to serve these territories with the same courage and compassion you've already shown? Do you choose this path, knowing it will be harder than any you've walked before?" Elara thought about her grandmother, who died protecting her, about the years spent as a ghost, invisible and worthless, about the moment she'd pulled a dying wolf from a river and changed both their lives forever. "I do," she said clearly. Cassian lifted a second crown, smaller than Ronan's but no less beautiful. "Then I crown you Elara Draven, Queen of the Northern Territories. May you rule with wisdom, compassion, and the strength that brought you here." The crown settled on her head, and the assembly erupted in applause. Not universal, not unanimous, but real. Wolves who'd spent their lives believing strength came only from dominance were slowly, grudgingly, beginning to understand something different. Ronan took her hand, and they turned to face their people together. "Some of you are thinking this is wrong," Ronan said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "That a wolfless queen weakens the throne. You're entitled to that opinion, but I want you to remember something." He gestured to Elara. "This woman survived in a world designed to kill her. She thrived where others would have broken. She showed mercy when revenge would have been easier, and courage when fear would have been justified. She is everything a queen should be, with or without a wolf." He looked at Elara, and the love in his eyes was unmistakable. "And she's mine. That's not negotiable, not debatable, not subject to your approval. This is the future we're building, one where strength is measured by character, not fangs, where wolves like Elara are valued, not discarded, where we choose to be better than our worst instincts." Marcus stepped forward. "The Shadowpine Pack supports Queen Elara. We've learned the cost of letting rage rule us. We won't make that mistake again." One by one, the other Alphas pledged their support. Some enthusiastically, others reluctantly, but all of them binding themselves to this new vision. When the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Ronan and Elara stood alone in the Great Hall. "Well, my queen," Ronan said, pulling her close, "how does it feel?" Elara thought about it, about the weight of the crown on her head, the responsibility it represented, the wolves who'd never fully accept her. Then she thought about the journey that had brought her here, the river, the conspiracy, the impossible battles fought and won. Thought about standing beside a king who saw her worth when everyone else saw only weakness. "It feels like home," she said finally, "like I finally found the place I was always meant to be." Ronan kissed her, deep and certain, a promise of all the impossible futures they'd build together. Outside, the Northern Territories stretched into the distance, wild, brutal, and beautiful. a land that had tried to break them both and failed. And at its heart, a wolfless girl who'd become a queen, proving that in the harshest frontier, true strength came not from dominance, but from the courage to save lives instead of taking them. The courage to choose compassion when the world demanded violence. The courage to believe that even ghosts could become legends. And in the years that followed, when wolves gathered around fires to tell stories of the great Alpha King and his unexpected queen, they always ended with the same words: she was the girl without a wolf who saved a kingdom. And in doing so, she saved them all.